Why do we even have anxiety? Especially because it feels horrible to be anxious. But fact is that what we commonly call as anxiety is actually anxiety in its worst form. In fact, when anxiety is well regulated, it can end up being useful in helping us survive. And surviving is important because humans and every other type of life on our planet has one main purpose, and that purpose is to continue existing. And to do that, we need to do two things. First, don't die, and second, make more of us. Yep. And not dying isn't something that just happens to us, because there are a lot of dumb ways to die, and the most basic system that guides us in figuring how to do these two things is a system of reward and punishment, which is a system that even smaller animals like lobsters are known to follow. To stay alive, they do more of stuff that keeps them alive, like stay away from things that might reduce their chances of living. I'm not saying that they're always successful in doing so. Lobsters use reward signals in their brain to do more of things which are good for them, and punishment signals telling them to stay away from harmful stuff. These signals are simply changes in the levels of certain chemicals which happen in their brain tissue. And there's some evidence that these chemicals are very similar to the ones we have, like serotonin. Human brains are bigger and more organized, with many interconnections between brain cells, and we call these connections as circuits. And when a circuit is activated, it's not just a chemical reaction, but we also have an experience where we can perceive the activation of the circuit and know there's something important our brain has noticed and it wants us to act on it. And this state of our brain where we perceive and then get motivated to act is what we call as an emotion. There's some evidence that smaller animals might have emotions as well, and they do have depression when their serotonin levels fall. But they don't have consciousness, so we're not sure if they feel those emotions, and let's maybe enter that rabbit hole in another video. As humans with consciousness, when we see stuff that's good for us, we also feel positive emotions, which additionally makes us do more of those things. And when we experience stuff that's bad for us, we feel negative emotion and want to do less of it. The negative emotion that we feel when we come near things that are dangerous or threatening is fear. The moment the brain detects danger, it activates the area called the limbic system, which is where our fear circuits lie, and these create warning signals by secreting certain chemicals. And with this, we feel the emotion of fear and the thoughts linked to it, because we also have the ability to think. This starts a fear response where we go into a fight or flight mode with the purpose of fighting what scares us or fleeing the situation to save ourselves. And to do this, our heart and lungs work hard to get oxygen to our muscles so that we can fight or flee, and our brain gets more thinky and vigilant to find the best ways to deal with it, while constantly scanning the environment and tracking the danger. If we know the danger is too much and is too risky to move, we enter the freeze mode, hoping that the danger doesn't notice us and it goes away. The great thing about fear is that once the danger is gone, our fear also goes away. There are also chemicals that can help us feel relaxed. When even our thoughts are positive, we're able to see how strong we are, and we also make note of what strategy saved us. And then we basically go back to doing our usual stuff. One common question I've been asked is whether we already knew how to face our fears from when we were born, or do we learn what to do as we grow up? What really happens is a bit of both. When we are born, we already have basic information of how to survive, which is stored in our genes, which means we know some things from birth itself, and that's our basic fear circuit. And then we experience things as we grow and learn, and over time, if things go well, we become calm and confident, able to face the usual dangers of the world, and in this way, both nature and our nurture contributes towards our confidence. So we had reward and punishment, and we have emotions. But then we evolved further and decided to think more, so that even when there's no danger, we can think and predict danger. And this ability to predict danger is called forethought, where fore means ahead and thought means thought. And this thinking ahead about possible future dangers is called as an anxiety. Anxiety is less acute than fear, but it also stays longer, because while it's there, it makes us prepare for the future dangers, much like the ant in the ant and cricket story that we have all read. And preparing so increases our chances to survive even more, after which we feel stronger, and so we learn that anxiety circuits are actually helpful for survival. So we're doing pretty well till now, but there's a catch, because too much of even a good thing can also be bad, and that's why you're watching this video, to understand about anxiety that has become bad. Now, in an ideal world, we would have danger and feel fear and do stuff to escape the danger and be prepared for it by thinking ahead and overall do well. But the current world might at times become more dangerous than we expected or learned to cope with. Danger could also be linked accidentally to something that we saw with it, which makes us learn as if the second thing is dangerous in itself, and we start to fear that second thing as well. In this way, our fear and anxiety circuits could become more active than we could manage healthily. It's worse when we have had weird experiences when we're younger. We might be born a certain way where we see danger differently and then react to it differently too, which could mean that even usual dangers could induce more fear in us than is required to keep us alive. The way we're brought up defines how we see the world. For example, if our parents were too protective of us, we wouldn't know what fear is, compared to someone whose parents allowed them to explore stuff, make some mistakes, and learn from them. So then, when we go out into the real world and see the usual stuff that looks a bit risky to most people, it feels way more dangerous to us because we're not ready for it. On the other hand, if we didn't get any protection at all, or our home itself was a dangerous place to be, and we didn't yet have ways to defend ourselves, we would have to deal with too much too soon, and that would create patterns of thought and coping that turn out to be unhealthy for us in the long run. Our experience could have also been unpredictable, where sometimes we were protected too much, but sometimes we were neglected. Or when we did something incorrectly and we got very different reactions for it at different times or by different people. And this could be confusing for most of us, making us wonder what really is the best way to act. Would a certain way help me survive, or would it kill me? And even though we face such things throughout life, these experiences in childhood are more sticky, and that's because our brain is new and it's so receptive to learning, and as it is, it makes all these new connections within, which is called as neuroplasticity, and when this happens to a young brain, it leads to longer lasting changes. That's why what we experience in childhood sets off patterns of thoughts and behaviors called schemas, which govern how we react to future experiences, and when these become more permanent, they basically become who we are as a person or our personality. And that's why some of us are more anxious or neurotic than others. We might overthink about everything or work like perfectionists, giving ourselves no chance to make a mistake, or we might try and control everything so that we're able to keep threats away. We might become people pleasers, or we'll go avoiding people and tasks because that means we can avoid conflicts or getting embarrassed. There's obviously many other types of ways we could react, and each of us has a combination of these qualities. But we end up having certain patterns of negative thinking called cognitive appraisals, which make us perceive the world as unpredictable and believe that we might not be able to cope with it. And we believe it even more because we see other people apparently coping pretty well, and we feel the need to endlessly think about this stuff and prepare for bad things that might happen to us. Sadly, these beliefs make us feel more anxious, and we end up coping with what we can to make us less anxious in the moment. We might try to avoid these situations that trigger the anxiety in us. For example, there might be a party we want to go to, but then there's a chance we might not be able to connect to people there, and so we don't go at all. Or we might go, but we'll play it safe and use ways to avoid talking to people, hence preventing us from getting potentially embarrassed. Some of us who fear specific things like getting sick from germs do stuff like washing our hands many times to remove the germs, or avoiding potentially dirty stuff at all. We might also feel better when we ask others for some kind of reassurance, like if I fear getting a panic attack, I might ask my partner, will I be okay, before I leave the house. And though that's cute, I might end up doing it more than a few times to calm myself down, which makes it an anxiety response. But when coping in this way does make us feel less anxious, then what's so bad about it? Well, there's the catch again. While initially it might bring down our anxiety, but such ways of avoiding facing the actual fears work only temporarily, and over time, they become less effective in doing so. And when we think and respond in these ways, all the healthy fear and anxiety circuits in our brain get jumbled and confused over time, and so do the basic chemicals we had that signaled actual anxiety. These anxiety circuits, which were usually switched off at most times in the day, get switched on constantly or unpredictably, and we feel stressed for longer periods of time. And in some of us, it's because of some trigger event, while in others, it might just be a slow build-up to a moment when the anxiety becomes so much that it's persistent, which means it's always there, and it's also pervasive in that it intrudes different aspects of our lives until we reach a point where we aren't able to function properly. We stop enjoying doing stuff, our minds are always preoccupied, and it becomes too much to handle. And that's what we call as clinical anxiety, which looks like the fear response of fight, flight, or freeze, but constantly being in that mode makes us feel irritable, uncomfortable, unable to sleep. We feel restless, trapped, like we're going crazy, thinking way more than we can handle. And that's when we realize that the anxiety that had helped us exist more at some point now makes us not want to exist anymore because we feel exhausted. When we're suffering from clinical anxiety, we mostly do know that our fear is excessive and that we're not weak. Many of us end up feeling frustrated because we've tried our best ways to stop feeling this way, but it just doesn't go. That's why when someone tells us to stop overthinking and not to worry, and oh yes, that it's just a phase, it can feel quite invalidating. It's like when your computer gets stuck and you're about to smash it with a hammer and someone asks you if you tried Control or Delete. Like, bro, are you serious? Having said that, I do want to mention that there are ways to make our brain less chaotic and to not feel too anxious. So if you wait a bit, I will be making a video on explaining how to come out of this anxiety.